an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering The Magicians, Season 4, Episode 6, A Timeline and Place. In this episode, I find out where Marina and Penny are. Turns out Marina is indeed alive and shall remain so, it seems. Also, I love what's going on in Alice's storyline. And there's a moment that makes me laugh for several minutes. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. First of all, thank you so much to Jessie for commissioning this episode. I think this is one of those things, when I say like favorites, it can feel very absolute. But I think this might be one of the most enjoyable episodes of The Magicians so far. It was just packed with really great moments. I feel like there's been much more focus on character this season, and it's not like they're light on plot at all, but it doesn't feel like things are happening to people for no reason. Everything is tied in with who they are. Everything is very purposeful. And I'm hoping it continues in this vein. You know, we're maybe halfway through the season? I don't even remember how many episodes there are per season. I think there are like 20, 18. This mainly, I want to talk about Alice and her storyline. First of all, the woman that is playing her new roommate / landlord, she is familiar. I can't remember what I have seen her in, but I liked her in that too. All I know is I remember liking her. I didn't want to look her up just in case. And I feel like her acting is part of what brings Alice's storyline to the next level. She feels like a real person. Hollywood has a tough time with depicting genuine, ordinary people in a way that doesn't feel patronizing sometimes. You know, this is a woman who is, probably blue collar. She is somebody who has struggled with addiction, who has struggled with being in prison. And there is nothing about her that feels particularly rough in this over-the-top way that Hollywood really loves to lean on. They just, people will affect a way of speaking to sort of like give an indication that somebody's from a tough background. They will do all these things that are supposed to be sort of shortcuts to like signal to the audience, but they're really kind of, when you get right down to it, they're almost a little bit offensive, And I love the fact that this woman is, if you go to like AA meetings, she is the type of person that you're going to meet. As somebody who went to a ton of AA meetings with my dad as a kid, I know her, 100%. And she is the kind of person that would be constant. She's the kind of person who would always be there and always be the one to bring donuts. She is somebody who is committed because she has been through some shit and she knows the value of that. And she knows that her own recovery is dependent on being of service to other people. She has seen the shit and she knows by now. So in that respect, as soon as we meet her and start to learn more about her, I began to be really impressed with the way the show was handling Alice's story, because the whole thing last episode was talking about redemption and me hoping they would focus on that for Alice. And the reason that my father got involved in the church was because of going to AA meetings. And he started going to those because he decided that he didn't want to be doing coke anymore, which he had been selling. He didn't want to drink anymore because he got out of hand with it. So he started going to these AA meetings, and he ran into some people who were ex-Hell's Angels. And my father he was a coke dealer from Colombia. He has done some bad shit, y'all. Like, he was in the guerrillas before he even started selling coke. It was a bad scene for him. He had probably killed and hurt a lot of people. And I know that he struggled with feeling like he could never make up for what he had done. And then he met people who had been part of a gang here in the U.S. who were turning their lives around and trying to do better and be better, but who had the same background in really, truly hurting people that my father had. And it was something I think that he didn't really think was of possibility for him. And when he found out that these were people who understood exactly where he was coming from, and that they were attempting to turn things around for themselves in a real way, and that there was a sort of program for that called Christianity, it was everything. It became his whole life. And while I think it turned into its own sort of unhealthy militant, obsession, I understand very much why he was so committed and drawn to it. And that's how it is for Alice meeting this woman, somebody else who has done some shit. And we don't know the details of this woman's history. And I don't want to know. I'm fine with it. If they decide to tell us, it's fine. I'm not worried about it, though. But the fact that Alice is meeting somebody who it seems gets it, and who also is fresh to magic and so can bring a totally new perspective, is really, really important. And I feel like this woman's being so unpretentious and so eager, but also she has a measured approach. She wants to learn because this is something huge, obviously, being able to do magic. Guys, the moment when Alice sees her outside, zeroing in on something, and she puts it on the front steps of, and I don't even remember, was it a church? But it's a box full of money that somebody buried, and she leaves it. Alice confronts her about it. And this lady, and please help me with her name, anybody in the audience, if you know what it is, I can't remember, but she knocks over her coffee, and Alice uses magic to scoop it all up and put it back into the cup. And the acting of having seen magic like that done for the first time, she's doing magic, but she doesn't quite realize that's what's happening. And she's doing magic that's easy to sort of play off as being just intuition of some kind, something weird. But she's watching magic being done in front of her that there's no explanation for at all. That was some fucking Harry Potter shit right there that you just did. Her acting is so good. I felt it. The shock, the low-key fear, but also wanting to believe it. All of that scene just resonated with me so hard. And then the fucking library shows up, and they invite her to get a library card. Now, this is a really interesting thing that I am curious about because, okay, first of all, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So people have talked before about in Harry Potter, for example, when you are Muggle born and you suddenly get a letter from Hogwarts, how did they find you? And this is sort of a similar question for me. I guess they felt her using the ambient magic. I am assuming that the library knows that there are hedge witches out there, and they're fine with that as well. But it's weird that they are immediately able to like zero in and offer something like a library card with somebody like her when they don't do the same thing with somebody like Quentin or Julia. I guess that they were part of the huge story and the multiple runs of a timeline. So maybe they were treated differently, but I don't think so, because when Julia is in the other body and masquerading as somebody else, she is led into Breakbills as well. Is it just that this woman is considered too old to go to Breakbills? Because that feels like a little shitty to me. Like maybe it would be totally worthwhile to let her attend. I don't understand why there should be an age restriction. And is it just because she like lives, you know, far? Is the campus located in an actual particular place, or is it a dimensional thing, like getting in and out of the Never Never in Dresden Files? Because I kind of had assumed the latter, but I'm realizing now I don't actually know that. Like, I have been just assuming that the way things happened to Julia and Quentin is the way it happens when you find out you have magic. I have a question about the church she's going to, too. Because Alice is watching this video of this minister. I can't remember what draws her into watching this video, but the minister's talking about how lost things want to be found. And that is how this woman's power begins to manifest, as finding lost objects. So I'm wondering, is this dude able to give power to people, or is the sermon that he is preaching affecting the way that she uses her power? Like, is it the kind of thing where, you know, she says she's not religious, but she continues going to church because the church was there for her when her mother died after she had just gotten out of prison. And I'm wondering, you know, she doesn't have to be religious to be really internalizing the message in these sermons. Is it becoming so real for her because she is that committed to the sermon despite not actually being really religious? Is that a sort of a psychological effect that can change your magic? Because I feel like that's definitely has to be linked, you know? I don't know. So the library offers a library card. And of course, Alice thinks when she sees them outside the door that they are here for her. And she begs her not to. Oh, Ashley says in the books it's located in upstate New York. Okay. Ashley, do you know this lady's name? Can you help me out? But she is, the library is only here to offer her a library card. They are not actually even here for Alice. They don't appear to know that Alice is here, which I found sort of great. I always like when there are moments like this where somebody is a fugitive and they believe that like they've just been caught out and it turns out it's a completely unrelated thing. And I'm, yes, talking about specifically the movie The Fugitive. But Alice kind of bugs out when she realizes that they're offering this woman who only just has realized that she has magic. Sheila, thank you, Ashley. That she's like brand new to magic and they're already offering her a library card. And this would sound like a great deal to somebody who doesn't know any better. It would sound like they're offering me all kinds of access to knowledge and, you know, what is the possible downside of this? But I love how much she respects Alice's reaction to them showing up. She doesn't even need to know what it is that happened. She doesn't need any details. All she does is look at Alice fucking shaking and scared and is like, listen, anything that has caused you to have this sort of response is probably bad news. So don't worry about it. I won't do it. And I loved that. This is a person who has learned you don't necessarily need to know the whole story. All you need to know is that somebody that you have begun to trust their judgment thinks this is a bad idea and maybe just sort of back off from it. And I just fucking love that. It's just such a great indicator of maturity, of trust between her and Alice, of life experience that has just fucking taught this lady. And she knows to, like, now that she has learned from experience, to trust other people's experience, because that means something. Just everything about this was so great. So she suggests to Alice, what if you taught me magic? And of course, Alice is really having a hard time with magic lately. Like, her relationship with it is fraught. She doesn't even really want to be doing it unless it's like helping her friends who are in trouble right now. And she doesn't agree right away. But finally, this lady is like, look, there are all kinds of really amazing things that you could do. And one of the main things is, it turns out that where they live is Modesto, and this turns out to be a sort of a Flint, Michigan situation. And there is lead in the water, and it's because nobody, like, the pipes are corroding and nobody has fixed it. So Alice pours some water out of the tap and just uses magic to separate the lead out of the water. And this, of course, is this revelation for Sheila, who's like, could you do that for the whole water supply? Wait, could you just fix the pipes? Are you serious? We have to do this. And poor Alice, who's like not prepared for this enthusiasm mentally because she's still traumatized, is at first kind of resistant, but she can see that this lady means what she's saying about using the magic for good things. And I love, love, love the moment where she says, well, we're going to have to talk outside. And she's got a cigarette in her hand. And Alice says, you smoke outside in your own house? And she says, well, it was always my mother's rule, and it just felt wrong to break it just because she was gone. And that's the moment where Alice is like, oh, this bitch is a rule follower. Okay, she has respect. Okay, this is different. It's such a, so good. I just love the writing in this episode. I love how Alice's mind works. I love all of it. So Alice begins to teach her. And when she suggests fixing the pipes, Alice is like, I know that's like possible in theory with magic, but we don't have access to the kind of ambient magic that we would need to do something of that scale. That's just a huge project. And this is when Sheila zeroes in on a leaky magic pipe. This is the only part of the episode that I was kind of like, oh, okay, that's so convenient. But I'm not that mad about it. It just is like the instant that she says, we don't have enough magic. That same exact moment is when Sheila's like, this pipe is different. It has a leak. And I was like, really? She just finished saying that there's not enough magic like 2 seconds ago. And this lady immediately feels that. That's just so, give it a little breathing space in the episode, guys. But it's fine. So they find the pipe and basically pop it open. Like they make the whole leak bigger. And this begs the question, why this hasn't been done by everyone. How can pipes that are magic leak like this in the first place? And if they can, that means they're fallible. So why hasn't the plumbing system that the library has created in general been attacked by people all over the place? That should be a huge issue that they're dealing with. Like, the library needs plumbers. They need that magical plumber who came down and turned the fucking fountain off. They need people who are able to do that. Austin brings up an interesting point in the chat. My guess is that they don't know how to find the pipes, not the library, but other magicians. Only this lady has this finder power. It's rare, like a traveler. Okay. Interesting. All right. I'll take it. So they break it open And I can't remember exactly how Alice does what she, like, because what she does is try and pull the lead from the water, and this is supposed to sort of reverse the corrosion, and I'm not sure exactly how this works. It sounds like, to a layman like me, like that wouldn't be possible, but also there's a lot about the way that that plumbing works and chemistry works that I don't understand, so it's certainly possible. But whatever the explanation of how this goes, I am really, really here for Alice getting to see the good that magic can do. And it's one of those things that, like, it really begs the question why more people weren't doing shit like this out there in the world. We don't really see our friends who are, you know, all magicians. We don't really see them appearing to have the urge to do things like this. Like the closest that we get is Julia deciding to help people because she has found out that she's a goddess and being basically petitioned by people to help in specific ways that they are asking for. But, you know, before magic went away and came back and was so scarce, this was something that was possible. And as far as I can tell, there weren't people out there like doing this kind of like goodwill work. And I'm sure that's not true, but that the show didn't focus on them. But I would have liked it if this had occurred to people. Because, I mean, there are things like this that are practical. I mean, can you imagine just being able to basically stand outside, I don't know, a fucking detention center for immigrants, right? And be able to do something to like improve the conditions in there. Be able to suddenly have everybody like the doors unlocked and everybody get to fucking leave. Cause all of the guards to get knocked out so these people are able to fucking flee. Like, God, I would definitely do some shit like that. I would be fucking up the entire world. But, you know, that's also that I'm a megalomaniac, so... But this lady goes on home and Alice decides to stay behind. And she's just sitting there watching these kids playing in the water and really enjoying, genuinely touched at the fact that she was able to do something with magic that had this kind of effect. And it's really the look on Alice's face here. I don't know if you guys have ever been part of something that you have felt really made a difference in some way. And that it can be on all kinds of different scales. It could be working with kids and hearing one of the kids repeat something important to another that you said and realizing like, oh my God, they really heard me. For me, of course, it's the show and people writing to me about having gone through like terrible bouts of depression, wanting to take their own lives and not doing that because they have something to look forward to, wanting to just get to the next week and hear the next episode. You would think it would make you feel like a pride that could be dangerous, but instead it makes you feel so small and humbled because you're like, this thing that I'm doing that I kind of approached as just for me as a business and something fun to do that I hoped people would just enjoy has had this effect that I never even considered that is enormous. And it makes you remember how much of your life is having effects that you may not be aware of at all. That small moments for you are big moments for somebody else. And it just reminds you of that. And the look on Alice's face of this, like, she gets choked up, you know, she has tears in her eyes. And it's just this kind of moment of like, oh my God, it doesn't have to be the way it's been. I can choose a different thing. I can make this something else. I loved it. I loved it so much. There is just a relief in her. And I'm so pleased that the show is able to turn me around on Alice's storyline so completely. I really just didn't feel invested in what was going on with her. And of course, now we have to fuck it up by having the library come to see Sheila. And they tell her, you've been a busy girl. Now, they have books on everyone. So I'm assuming that Sheila's like ability is known to them and that they are able to tell what it is that has been going on, like that she has this finding ability, that she is the one who broke open the pipe. I don't know how much of that sort of thing, like the books of people's lives are a particular, I feel, weakness of the show, where it's like they help at times, but knowing that they exist, I feel, throws a wrench in a lot of different storylines where you start to be like, okay, but if they know everything, then they could just be there to stop things, or they could, I mean, I don't, you know what I mean? It's, I'm sure that there are rules around it, but it always occurs to me. But Sheila is, I would guess, probably taken away by these guys. All we see is, you've been a busy girl, and then the camera moves back to Alice. But I would assume that she is going to be reprimanded, punished. Something is going to happen. And Alice now is going to have to deal with the fact that this woman who is really good-hearted, who has excellent judgment, who just wants to help people, is being harassed by the folks that she's running from. And now she has to choose between being caught and being helpful. And I hope that she makes the right choice here. Sheila is a good egg. I'll be very, very bummed if she's only in like 1 or 2 episodes before going away. I want Sheila to be a big deal. I want her to be like a main character because I just fucking dig her whole vibe so much. But we'll see. So yeah, that's the Alice storyline. All right, so now let's talk about Julia and Quentin. Guys, all right, I'm gonna back up, start at the beginning. Julia and Quentin are trying to, I forgot to mention in Alice's storyline, the hedge witch that's working in the convenience store. They are the ones that blow up break bills, right? I think. Because he can feel the ambient magic in the air suddenly like go up, and starts experimenting while at work with like lighting some candles up and stuff because he can feel that there is, it was the local library. Oh shit. Interesting. They're terrorists. I'm loving this. I mean, they'd be terrorists either way. But break bills, I would kind of like understand. The library, that's part of like a system. Interesting. Yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on this guy. This fascinates me. But okay, so back to Quentin and Julia. They are, I love so much how this winds up going. I think it's a really interesting way to handle the storyline, because like they are being sent to search for something in this museum by the monster. They have a conversation at first about like whether or not they are going to help him. And of course, Julia's just like, dude, we have gone up against gods so many times, and we always like, maybe we kill the god, but it doesn't wind up being good for us. Every time we wind up losing in the end somehow. This is going to end badly. And Quentin's essentially like, dude, this is Elliot. He's in Elliot's body. We just have to try. We have to at least try. So Julia reluctantly agrees. She says something about feeling kind of useless because she can't do magic. I can't imagine, you know? I mean, it really sucks to be facing the kinds of things they're facing together and not be able to have magic and know that you were at one point. Julia is handling it astonishingly well. And they go to this museum, and they are trying to find a particular artifact that is supposed to be another like piece of the body puzzle. And they're in the middle of looking around when the monster pops up, and Quentin is so startled that he like knocks a vase over. The monster in Elliot's body is drunk. And this leads to this overall sort of story where he is getting drunk and high because he's bored. I was hopeful, and it doesn't appear that they're doing this. I was hopeful that what they were doing was pointing out the genetic and actual like physical components of addiction, that they were going to make it that Elliot obviously had issues with addiction. He abused drugs, he abused alcohol. And I was thinking that what they were doing was having this monster have those same weaknesses because he's occupying Elliot's body. And this was meant to be a sort of like commentary on the fact that people think that it's like a personality weakness that leads people to be addiction victims. But it's actually oftentimes something genetic that is in them that will lead to things like that. And instead, it's just played that the monster's bored. And I'm not really like too angry about it, but I really, really thought they were doing a thing. And I got kind of excited about it. And then it turns out they're not. So I was a little disappointed. But it leads to probably one of my favorite scenes with Quentin. And it's not the mummy scene, although that was amazing. It is later on when they wind up confronting the monster that is picking a bunch of pills up off the fucking floor. Quentin gets in its face. Elliot is so horrifying looking in this scene. He's so pale. He looks so sweaty. And he comes up and gets in Quentin's face at first, and it just says, "Why do you care about him so much?" And Elliot says, "Because I do. You kill him, and we are done. I swear to God, I am serious. I will abandon you, and I will die trying to burn you to the ground." And this is all well and good to say, but Quentin has said that before and has had his arm broken and immediately caved. But then he wraps his hands around Quentin's face, and Quentin's like, "Go ahead, break my bones, strangle me, do whatever you need to do. I'm too tired to care anymore. You hurt him, you take one more pill and you can build your body on your own." And he just stares the monster down, not flinching, not breaking, and fucking is the boss of this scene. Oh, I am so excited, you guys. I fucking hated Quentin so much. I hated him so much. And he is finally doing things. He is finally like owning some power here, standing up for something, and genuinely like being a fucking bamf. I mean, the look in his eyes when he's like, "Fuck you." Oh, hot. So hot. I love it. I'm so excited. Thank God. And this is just it's so great a turnaround. I think this is part of what made this such an enjoyable episode for me, is that characters that I normally just don't really vibe with really had their moments this episode. You know, between him and Alice, I'm just like fucking here for it. But we will back up and talk about the fucking mummy scene, because I swear to God, I don't know who wrote this scene. I don't know who wrote this episode. I don't like to look up stuff like that because it often does lead to spoilers. But guys, this episode is so well written. So the fucking monster is like, well, why don't we ask somebody who was there for information on where we can find the next piece? And he puts his hand on a sarcophagus and it starts to jump and shake. And I was like, are we doing this? We are doing this. Then we get to see a mummy, a genuine... Guys, Halloween is like mummy season, right? Like that's the kind of time of year that you see mummies being like in decorations and things like that. But we don't really get to see mummies in a lot of media because they don't have the same kind of like fear factor to them that a zombie does. A zombie bites you, turns you into one of them. A mummy, it's sort of like there are variations on it. It possesses bodies is sort of like the thing, but that's not quite as like visceral. And you can do the same thing with like a demon. There's not really a need for that. So I'm really excited to see an actual mummy in this show, fucking wrapped in bandages and everything. And I love Quentin commenting on his like handwriting being really good, despite the fact that he's like fucking decayed away. And Quentin is using this app on his phone to translate it, which is so cool. I wonder if this is a real thing. I would assume it is, like that this is something that you can use to, if you're traveling and you don't know. I mean, it's one thing to be able to say like, where's the bathroom? But reading signs and stuff when it's a totally different alphabet has got to be really, really hard. So having an app like this, I would assume it's real. But you know, the script is so ancient that I'm surprised it would work. Maybe it's magic. Maybe he's like made a magical app. I don't know. But he says, it's a mandrake root. We're looking for Heka, the god of magic and medicine. It looks like he's got one of your stones. And the monster says, let's go kill him. And Quentin says he's already dead. It looks like he was buried in the temple of Esna. And the mummy nods. The mummy's very helpful, is part of what's so great about this, which was looted shortly thereafter. And guys, the acting, I wonder who's under those wraps. But this mummy is really like trying to be like, you know, I'm here to help. What do you need? I'll answer your questions. It's fine. So the monster bounces away, does his you figure it out thing. And Quentin and Julia just say goodbye to the mummy and leave it standing there. And it just watches them go. And then there's an extended moment of it looking around, unsure what to do now. Guys, I paused the show and went and got Owen and made him just watch this scene. I rewound it. I laughed so fucking hard. There's a lot that this show does to try and be funny that I find like amusing, but not really funny. Like sometimes I feel like it's trying too hard. But this is a type of humor the show doesn't do often. This awkward, like timing dependent humor, which you need a lot of room to let it breathe for the laugh to come. And they don't have time for that a lot. But this, I don't know what to think about what's going to happen to this fucking mummy. I mean, what is it just going to live there now and just be like climb back into its sarcophagus and pretend to be asleep, but like come out at night and just kind of wander around? Like, what now? Is it going to take over people's bodies? Is that going to be like a thing? I got nothing, but I fucking died laughing. So that is pretty much the end of what's going on with them, I think. So, okay, let's go to the Margot storyline. It turns out that that she has to deal still with the opium in the air problem. And there are these beets that are grown in this one particular area that can evidently like fix the problem, like it can be administered. It's a weird moment where Margot functioning. I mean, we've seen this already, right? Margot is bloodthirsty. And I like to think that she has learned something since her earlier days as queen. But she still has that instinct of just go for the fucking jugular and deal with the consequences later, if ever. And she is being taught a bit of diplomacy, but not doing super well with it. So she has to appeal to some people from different areas to get the beats that she needs to like solve this issue. And she doesn't actually know how to, first of all, the like initial meeting that she has, it's kind of an insulting moment where, first of all, guys, I'm sorry. I just keep remembering. So speaking of jokes that the show does, but this one actually worked for me. The name of the like area that makes these beats is like Cotswold, I think, something like that. And she calls them Cockswallow, Clitswell. Like there's a bunch of different, it's genuinely funny. Every time she does it, I was just like, that's another good one. I like it. And they keep correcting her. And eventually she has to talk about like one of the Fingerling Islands and she calls it the Fingering Island. I mean, oh, Margot, never change at all. But yeah, this woman who she's trying to make a deal with is like, oh yeah, you don't even know like where our island is. And we are not going to deal with somebody who only comes to like be nice to us when they need something, but doesn't actually give us any consideration when they are in power and we are in need of something from them, perhaps. And we find out that they're going to sell their beats to West Loria, which is a new thing. So we find out King Idri and his sister Rue had a squabble/slight war. As acting High King, I asked myself, what would Margot or Elliot do? Support our ally Idri. Unfortunately, he lost. Now Queen Rue rolls over West Loria, and because she's pissed we help Idri, she wants all Lady Pike's fresh beats. So they oh my god, this leads to Margot saying that she's going to firebomb the shit out of the whole area and go take the beats. And they're asking her to be a little bit more restrained. And basically Margot tells them, because the way that Fen says it is, what would Elliot do? And she says, he's not here, and just tells them to like get the fuck away from her. And we see more than once this episode how bringing up Elliot doesn't have the effect that people want it to have. What they're hoping is by mentioning Elliot, who is somebody that Margot loves and admires, it will inspire her to emulate him, because she will remember what he was like and want to carry that on. But instead what happens is Margot gets angry, enraged, and resentful that anybody would use her best friend's name and throw it in her face like that. Which, to be honest, I really deeply get. I'm not mad at them. I understand what they're trying to do, especially when you're dealing with somebody like Margot who does immediately go to fucking scorched earth right away. I get why it would be your instinct to try and calm her down by using somebody that you feel she would understand to get through to her. But it does not work out that way at all. So we have Josh step up here. And Josh says, can we really risk this war? And I am really good at diplomacy. Guys, I'll tell you what. So here's the thing about me. He is talking to Margot about this, and this is probably the hardest I have ever related to Margot. The hardest I've ever related to her. He's trying to explain to her what diplomacy is, and she says, well, it was an accident, and then says, I don't know how to intentionally care about other people's shit. Guys, oh man. I feel that so hard. And what's weird, it's not that I lack empathy. It's almost that I have such high level empathy that I have to keep it shut off as much as I can, because if I let it turn on, I get overwhelmed with feeling everything all the time. So I have to lock it up. And this results in me having trouble relating to people because I am not willing to turn it on when I don't know that this person's going to be a real part of my life and it's worth the effort and emotional toll it's going to take on me. And I get the sense that's how Margot is. Margot does not do well with processing emotions. So she says she doesn't care. I don't quite buy that. I think Margot cares a lot, but she cares so much that she goes all in when she cares, and she can't just do that all the time. So she has to lock that shit down. She picks one or two people in her life to really fucking care about, and she guards them with her fucking life and is fierce as hell with them. But everybody else can basically burn because she doesn't have the capacity to regulate how she deals with them the way that she can if she just picks one or two people. This is something that has taken me a long time to understand about myself. Like, I was in a pretty close-knit group of people during this retreat. And it was about 15 people or so, maybe less. And the people in that group became very friendly with each other and began to, like, when we left, stayed in touch and really, like, got to be a little bit more involved in each other's lives. There was one girl in that group named Gray who I really just clicked with. And Gray came to visit me because she lived in Nantucket. She came to visit me in Connecticut. And she was talking about some of the other people in the class, in the retreat. And I was failing to show the interest that she thought I should. And she said something like, don't you want to know what's going on with them? And I said, no, I want to know what's going on with you. I really we have a real friendship. I don't feel close to them at all. I hope things are going well for them in a general sense, but I'm not invested. I'm not interested in getting in touch with them because I didn't have that. And she and I wound up losing touch, I think, because she was kind of disgusted with my reaction when she asked me that question. But I was being as honest with her as I knew how to be. I choose a couple people and I go hard for those people. And otherwise, I just can't afford to let myself care a lot of the time. And then it gets to a place where I then am incapable of turning it back on when I actually need to. And I know I should. And intellectually, I can read somebody's story and be like, oh my God, that is awful. I really what a situation. I care about this for you. And I have had that happen more and more with being in the patron group and seeing everybody's individual stories, because it's a smaller, more controlled group of people. And I know that these people have been around and that getting involved in what's going on with them will be a part of my life. This is worth it. I'm caring what's going on. It's not like a random that is in a comment section. But Margot knows that her people need something. And as far as she is concerned, her people are the people that matter. And everybody else that's standing in the way of her getting what she needs for the people she is responsible to can get fucked. Because she has a fucking obligation to care as best as she can for this group. And she takes that really seriously. I mean, she's shutting down how she feels about Elliot in order to be able to do her job. She does care a lot, but it's so carefully controlled that it appears to be the opposite of caring. And I love Margot so much, and I love her more with every episode, and I just relate to her so much all the time. So this leads to a kind of, what is it? Cyrano de Bergerac? Is that the one with he is talking in her ear through this like magical object, trying to kind of describe how she should react to different comments. It's a really awkward scene because the silence between her and this other queen, I guess. I don't even know if it is a queen. I think it is a queen, though. There are such long, drawn-out pauses because of having to let Josh speak that I am wondering what this woman must be thinking of Margot, just staring at her weirdly and maybe having some facial reactions that appear to be out of nowhere. But he gives Margot some advice on how to watch the way this woman eats and behaves to get an idea of who she is. And he says that she is a person who is proud of her accomplishments, but being so driven has led her to be lonely and misunderstood. And he says, Tix said something about the polite alpacas. Maybe she's proud of that. And Margot brings it up. And this queen immediately launches into a whole thing about alpacas. I love the fact that alpacas are just like supposed to be known as dicks. But this leads to her like putting this alpaca milk in Margot's tea. You guys, I had to look away from the camera as she poured this out. This was the most revolting shit. I don't know what this was made of. It looked like it was like a combination of like cherry, like Kool-Aid and chunks of vanilla pudding, but it was the worst. And Margot tries to use her diplomacy on this lady who says, like, I judged you too quickly, but then eventually I already pledged that I would sell to West Loria, and I'm a woman of my word, so I gotta stick to that. And Margot goes and talks to Josh. He tells her to like keep it up and that she's like eating out of her hand. I know you didn't think you could do this, but honestly, I think you're out Ellioting Elliot. And he says that and you can see her face fall here. And she goes back into that room and she tells this woman basically, I am going to take your fucking beets, and in exchange, I am not going to kill and skin and eat all of your tasty alpaca children. Okay? And poor Josh over here. He has tried his best, but they have this confrontation. It's clear him saying that fucking got to her, and she lashes out at him in this very personal, unforgivable way. It's one thing to just yell at somebody like, how fucking dare you, and to just kind of lose your cool. But instead, she calls him a stupid prick. How dare you say I out-Ellioted Elliot? Why would I ever want to do anything without him? He tries to apologize. He realizes how fucking bad of a call that was. He immediately gets it and is trying to make it right. And she throws it in his face, like the whole like tactic that he was using to understand who she is, who this other woman is, and says like, oh, you think you know me because of this? Because if you did, you would know I don't need a new partner in crime. He tries to say that I wasn't trying to replace Elliot. And she says, I may be a cunt, but I am real. You're just a brown-nosed sweater boy, desperate to matter at all to anyone. And he says, I was a friend trying to maybe be your boyfriend. And she starts to, that like when he says that, she blinks a little and starts to call him back. Josh, I didn't. And he turns around and says, didn't mean to hurt me? Yes, you did. Believe it or not, I know exactly who you are, Margot. Really good scene. Really good scene. I loved it. Like, Margot, she's being herself. She's being in character, and lashing out at people and getting extremely personal is 100% how she is. I am somebody who is this way unintentionally. I don't mean to get personal or be cruel, but I don't hear sometimes how critical I am. And it turns into this, even though I'm genuinely a lot of times trying to be helpful or just explain how I feel about something. And I really am impressed with Josh's handling of it. The way he says, believe it or not, I know exactly who you are, means so many things. Like, it means, I know you were trying to hurt me. That's exactly what you were trying to do because I know you, and that's what you do. But also, I know who you are, and I was interested in a relationship with you anyway, because you think that you are, like, unlovable, I guess. But I don't think that. Despite knowing that you can occasionally pull this kind of shit, I still really like you. So it's a weird combination of things, of being like, yeah, you can be really shitty and cruel. Also, despite that, I'm here for you in my way. And I think he will still be. She has to make it up to him somehow. But it will take a bit of soul searching on her part, I think. She has to explain to him why she has so much self-loathing that she like kind of does this sometimes. And of course is still dealing with the grief from Elliot. All right. So then finally, we have to deal with the Penny and Marina thing. Now, it's funny because that took up the most of this episode, but I found it the least interesting, probably because it dealt with a character that is new that I'm not super invested in. I did really like the theory behind it, though. The whole thing is supposed to be that basically at this like atomic level, their bodies function differently because they're from different timelines. Their atoms are doing something else. I think he says they're quarks. I can't believe quark is a real word, by the way, but there it is. And this interferes with this poor kid's mother's disease. It turns out that she was like doing experiments with something that like fucks with your place in time. And it causes you to go in and out of different timelines and basically lose track of where you are and what's happening to you. And eventually you lose your mind and you die. It like kind of just is too much for your brain to handle. And he can track, using this like system that he has created, he can find people who are from other timelines who are messing shit up. And those people's mere existence in our timeline, there are protective spells on his mother that keep things stable for her. And their fucked up atomic shit messes with the spells. So what he's trying to do is travel around in time and find them and stop them from killing his mother. It takes a while for us to figure out that's what he's after. But once we realize this, of course, there is this amazing moment where, because it's Marina and Penny, of course, are the two from the other timeline. So they are the two that got ripped up. And Marina is just basically like, it's a terminal illness. She's going to die. Like, we may have accelerated it, but it was going to happen either way. Penny can't cope with Marina's attitude. And there's this great scene where he's just says, we help save her. Like, he's speaking in another language. And I love the expression on her face. Marina's acting of just being like, ugh. I feel like a lesser actress, this would feel really forced, but she genuinely gets across the vibe of somebody who all she wanted to do was go get her breakfast burrito. And here you go. You know what? It's great. But what winds up happening is that they have this box to travel around in time to, and they are trying to, they try to go back to their own time because this dude brings them to their original timeline. So they're trying to get back to the timeline that they had traveled to because they were having a good time there. And this kid doesn't realize that the timeline that he's bringing them back to doesn't have magic. So the spells on their cages don't work. And Penny is able to jump the hell out of his cage right away. He's going to leave Marina there, but she convinces him that she knows how to use this travel box thing. She doesn't. And they wind up in this weirdo, as they keep calling it, 1984 / the Crucible version of their world, where people who have magic are being persecuted. And we see a woman being arrested for having the hedge witch tattoos on her wrist. And I gotta say, the tattoos, I'm feeling it. Like, I would have to assume that there are tons of people in life who have those tattoos in honor of this show, right? And he winds up, there's a whole thing with like them creating a window into time to talk to this kid's mother. And it turns out she knows exactly what she's doing and that she's sacrificing her life, and she's fine with it because she thinks that her work is important enough to be worth it. And Penny is like not quite willing to accept this. And he uses the box by himself and leaves Marina behind because they're fighting about what to do. And he winds up in the underworld with the other version of Penny that we know. And our original Penny explains to him, you need to go back to the timeline that you jumped to, the one that you had been living in, because there is a lot riding on it. Much bigger things than you even realize. And you need to, I think he says you need to bring Marina back also. I don't remember if he says that, but regardless, he goes back to the timeline he had jumped from, and the kid tracks him down again. And he has a handful of dandelion clocks. Funny that they're called that, actually. And what he does is basically disperse the seeds so that the other atomic activity is too spread for this kid to ever fix. And zeroing in on Penny specifically will not do him any good. And it's a really awful scene because Penny is basically sentencing this kid's mother to death. But the truth is she's going to die either way. He knows that. I think this kid knows that. And he is just trying to make it so that he won't be constantly hounded by this guy anymore. And that's pretty much the end of it. It's him like trusting the library version of himself. And even though he doesn't have any evidence that this is true, what he's saying, and believing that there is something bigger that he has to participate in. So I guess we'll see. But Marina, I think she did stay behind because she wants to be with her girlfriend who died in her own timeline, if I'm not mistaken. So I think she stayed in the other version of the timeline, the 1984 version, I think. Am I wrong? But either way, I'm out of time, so I have to go. Thank you guys so much. Thank you again, Jessie, for commissioning this episode. This was just such a good one. I really loved it. And I'm looking forward to the next one. I'll see you all soon with the new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.